Good morning. My name is Kelley Hobart from Alpaca Direct, and we are going to be talking today about some quick tips for knitting your lace projects. It just makes knitting lace easier. Actually, knitting in general easier as well. Those tips can be used for both any kind of knitting, but specifically nice for lace knitting. So every week we have a prize, and for this last week we had some Ultra Alpaca Light, and this is by Barocco Yarn Company, and it's a 50-50 blend of Peruvian Highland wool and superfine alpaca. It's beautiful, and I think the winning color for this week was the purple colorway. You guys chose. It was very close. Yeah, but I think that was the winning color. So if you haven't used Ultra Alpaca by Barocco, it is a fabulous yarn. I use it all the time. It's a great yarn, and that is the lighter weight version. It's the sport weight.
And how do they enter each week?
Yes, true story. So all you have to do is enter it. To enter is post comments in the comment section. Let us know what you're working on. If you're working on a beautiful project, don't forget to let us know what the name of the project is and maybe the designer's name as well, so we can purchase the pattern or find it for ourselves if we'd like to knit it as well. And I was thinking for this week's prize, I could offer a couple choices. So we have these rainbow stitch markers, and they're our brand. It is a metal it's actually kind of magnetic, Jim.
No, they're just.
I mean, they stick to magnets.
Mm-hmm. They're coated in rubber.
Yes, and they're totally, I think it's painted. But what I love about these is when I'm doing lace, I can mark the different sections in different colors. So maybe I have one pattern in blue, one pattern in green, and the beginning of the round is orange or something like that, for instance. And I do that all the time with these stitch markers. So they're fabulous. So I was thinking that would be choice number one. And then for choice number two, we have these locking stitch markers that are also different colors. And then we have the little rainbow stitch markers. These are much smaller locking markers. And so you can have a choice of either these circular markers or the clip type. Yes, locking stitch markers. So you choose, and then next week we can send it out to the lucky prize winner. Also, I thought since it's getting a little close to Christmas, it's a great way to get a little Christmas gift for someone or maybe for yourself. So you post comments in the comment section and you'll be entered to win. And if you do win, all you have to do is get a hold of customer service at Alpaca Direct and give us your shipping address so we can get it out in the mail to you. So it's a great way to get a little goodie as we go along. So this last week, okay, so I forgot one of my socks over by the dog feeding bin because I set it down there to put the dogs away. But these are all done now. I've done the cuff and I've woven in all my ends. I think I'll block it one more time. Can you see?
Yeah, you can pull it back a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love this. Sock. I can't wait to wear these because, show them what?
The cuff, how you do the cuff.
Oh, yeah. The cuff is really long. I like the longer cuffs. And then I did Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off with my smaller needle, which I often tell you guys to do because what it gives you is a nice stretchy cuff. And that without having flaring. See how stretchy it is, but see how nice it looks. And all I do that is by using a needle that's a little bit smaller than what I knit with. A couple sizes smaller does the trick. So anyway, that's totally, I can't wait to wear these. And matter of fact, there's a chance of snow today. I don't know if it will snow or not, but these are going to be warm because they're the 50-50 blend of wool and alpaca. So, and with that garter stitch toe and heel and the color work, it's like double knit socks, but color work socks because it's double thick because it's carrying the strands from the color work in the back, which gives you a nice, thick, squishy sock. So I'm excited to be able to wear those soon. And then what I wanted to do is look at some different ideas and ways that we can do lace knitting and make it a little bit easier or look a little better. So I had a couple things to think about that I wrote down when I was going through my things. First thing that I wanted to show you is, you know how I always tell you cast on with your larger needle and then you can knit off of it with a smaller needle. But if you look at the cast on here on this project that I've started, you can see that it is equally as stretchy as the knitting. And I accomplished that task just by casting on with a needle that's a couple sizes larger. Isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
And then the first round, all I did is knit right off of the larger needles onto my smaller needles to begin the lace work. And I also wanted to show you another thing. If you're doing a project and you're not sure how big it's going to be, these are 12 stitches wide. And if you simply kind of straighten it out a little bit, and then you take your tape measure and you kind of just, you don't want to stretch it out, but just kind of measure about what it is. So each repeat is just about 3 inches. So if you count how many repeats that you have, and then you multiply it by 3, then you'll get how many inches around what the circumference is going to be for your project. It's an easy way to get gauge, so you know what your finished project is going to be close to this size. And I don't know, it's just an easy way to check for you if you're working on these projects. Another thing I like to do when I'm doing lace projects is to, not only are we going to knit with larger needles, but we like to knit with needles that have a lace tip. So I know that sounds easy enough, but I wanted to show you these different needles, right? So first of all, when you're doing lace work, you want to decide if you want a slippery surface or if you want a non-slippery surface. If you want a non-slippery surface, wood is always a good choice. So if you're new to lace and you're just learning how to do lace, then you might choose a wooden surface. These Chow bamboo needles are not as highly polished. You can kind of see it right through the package that they're not as highly polished as the Dream needles. So the Dream needles would be a little bit more slippery. And if you look really close, I tried to choose number 8 needles for all of these. You can see that the Dreams needles, which it's going to be inverse, so the Dreams would be on the left-hand side in the picture, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit sharper. I mean, for our customers to look at. So the Dreams needles are just slightly sharper than the Chow bamboo. So isn't that interesting to see them right side by side? Now let's look at these 3. Let's take a look at these. So we have the Chow red lace, which I totally love these needles, not only because the cord doesn't have memory, which means it doesn't wind up into a bowl, but also look at the tips really closely. Okay, this one is this Cassell Rockets. They're considered they have the sharper tip and the turbo finish, which they were, Cassell was always known for these Addy turbos. But you see how blunt the Addy turbo is. And the Rockets are just slightly sharper, but they're still very close. Can you see that, Jim? Yep. And then let me put them right next to the Chow-Goos. You see all 3 right next to each other? So the Chow-Goo on the right is a lace tip, and you can see that it's more pointed. And a little bit goes a long way with lace tip needles. If it's a little tiny bit sharper, it's like it could be 100% easier to get underneath the stitch of a lace weight yarn. So it's always something to know when you're purchasing needles, what you're going to be using it for. And if you are going to be using it for lace, the red lace has a very nice tip for knitting lace projects.
Is that what's on your yellow yarn over there? Oh.
These ones right here that I have are the red cord. Mm-hmm. So what is that? Red lace. Chow-Goo red lace. Also, they're reasonably priced, and they are and they have a nice tip, and they don't have memory, so they don't get kinked up. See how they kind of stay straight around in the circle? Not all needles do that. Some of them wind in little circles. The cords just stay wound up, and you're continuously trying to straighten everything out and keep it straight. And you could see even with these, when you're trying to cast on, if you have your stitches spinning in circles and you have the cord itself spinning in circles, how are you going to lay it down flat when you join in the round to make sure you're not twisted? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's not easy, is what I'm saying.
So the question about the Addies, are those Addy Rockets, are those a lace tip? Is that what it is? Or?
That's what they say. It's a lace tip. But look at them next. These are the same number 8, US number 8 needles. The Rockets on top and the turbos on the bottom.
So the Rockets are the lace tip, and they're just a little bit smaller.
tiny, 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 maybe imperceptible. I'm not sure. I do know that when I use the turbos as opposed to the rockets, I like the rockets more.
Okay.
I like them better. So if you've been a great fan of turbos, you might love the rockets. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to show that to you because when you're in you don't often get to see all the needle tips right next to each other, so you can make an evaluation of what you find useful. So anyway, we talked about the metal versus wood, metal being more slippery. So if you're newer to knitting lace, maybe wood would work for you. Or if you like knitting fast, metal is always awesome. So you'll rarely see me knitting with wood unless it is these Knitter's Pride Dreams. And the reason why I like the Knitter's Pride Dreams is because this highly polished wood. I can knit almost as fast with these Knitter's Pride Dreams as I can with metal needles. And there's one more thing that I like about these 16-inch Dreams. And I don't know if you can see the difference. Do you see a difference? That's 24-inch. I wish I had another 16-inch.
What's the difference?
The difference is that it has the longer needle.
Oh, okay.
On Dreams is the only one that has on a 16-inch on the number, the 16-inch cords has the little tiny needles. And when I'm doing hats, it's hard on a 16-inch cord and having this long needle trying to go like this to knit it. To get it to go straight on a hat. Or if you have these 16-inch and these little tiny needles, it really goes into a circle nicely, like the shape of a hat, for instance. Yeah. And so if you haven't tried the Dream 16-inch, I love those. Those are great for hats. And I also wanted to, so we talked about casting on with a needle 2 sizes larger. And then for those that are newer to knitting lace, you have to I'll find my tail and I'll stick it over here because my tail is where the last stitch was cast on, right?
You have bigger yarn to show people.
Yes, I have a bigger yarn just to show you how to do it. And so a little trick that I like to do when I'm knitting is to cast on one more stitch. And then you could see where my working yarn, I would take that stitch and pop it over this stitch over here on this side. And it gets a really nice join. Now, when you're joining in the round, you have to make sure that your cast on edge is flat and straight. Otherwise, if it has a bend in it, you have to start all over again. So you have to be really careful when you join in the round. And then you take this last stitch here, which is an extra stitch, and then I would put it right on over there. And then what you do is you see how it made a noose right here? And I was able to tighten it up. I was only able to tighten it up because I grabbed the stitch and put it over the top. The stitch that I put over the top was the one that was connected to the working yarn. If you try to grab the other stitch, like try to grab this stitch, you can't tighten it up because it doesn't have working yarn with it per se. It's easier to just get a perfect join in the round. Okay. To make it nice. And then you can go ahead and start knitting. You can either choose to take this stitch and put it over here, which I do oftentimes, and then begin knitting, have this stitch number 1 and put your stitch marker right there. And then this stitch will get worked at the very end. So that's how you do it. And then if you decide you're casting on with a larger needle and you're going to knit off of that larger needle onto the smaller needle, you would just take your smaller needle after that stitch is on there, and you can take it in the front or the back, whichever way that you want to, and then just start knitting. And you would do one complete round of knitting, and then you're joining. You're putting your new needle on while you're knitting across the first round. And you see, you can just, I could do ribbing or do any kind of stitch, but I'm just taking this smaller needle and just knitting off the bigger needle on. And then it gives you a really nice cast on edge that's nice and loose. This one is quite a bit smaller, so maybe 2 sizes smaller, but that's how you do it. And then I would go one complete round, and then these needles would be completely by themselves, and all the stitches would now be on my new needle. So that's how easy it is to do that. So now I wanted to take a look at this wonderful book, and I was thinking that I wanted to talk to you about this. And I've talked about it before. It's a treasury of knitting patterns by Barbara Walker, and she has like several of them, and I own a couple of them. Now, what I love about this book is that a lot of the patterns out there are based directly off of these books. I mean, literally, you can find the patterns word for word right in these books. So if you learn how to take a pattern that's knit flat, for example, like this one right here, you can see that this pattern is just a flat sample. If you can learn how to take a pattern that's knit flat and convert it to knitting in the round, you literally have hundreds of patterns that you can use, and you only have to pay, like I bought this book used and it was like $12. Mm-hmm. But you could literally spend the rest of your life knitting the rest of these patterns that are in this book and never pay for a pattern again. If you can figure out the gauge, like I told you here, and you can learn to convert the patterns. Okay.
There's probably another Technique Tuesday.
Yeah, I next week I'm going to talk about this. Next week, what I want to talk about is how you can convert a flat pattern and make it for knitting in the round, and how easy it is to convert such a pattern. Literally, this pattern that I'm knitting right now, which is this pattern right here, and I'll show it to you next week, is called the Crest of the Wave. And what I did is I went on to Ravelry, and I found the Ice Queen, which is a pattern that thousands of people have knit. And I think it is on Knitty. It's a free pattern on Knitty. But I checked what their stitch count was for their cowl that they do, and it was 156 stitches. So that's how I knew where to start on mine. Now I think I might cut it down a few repeats, because I've knit a few rounds now, and I feel like it's going to be more like closer to 35 inches, and I want it more like 25 inches.
That'll be for next week.
So yeah. And so anyway, but we will talk about this next week, how to take Crest of the Wave and convert it to, this pattern is already written for flat work, and then how you might make it so you can knit it in the round and make a really nice cowl out of it. So that's what I want to do for next week, because if you learn how to use these books, a lot of designers out there, they're getting their patterns directly from this book or her other books. And some of the patterns are like $7.50 a pattern. And this literally has 500 different patterns. So you see, if you learn a few little skills, you can knit out of one of these books till your hands fall off. And that's why I get so excited about these books. It's one of my favorite places to go look at. And a lot of times when I see a new pattern, the first thing I do is check out the book and say, is that pattern in here? Isn't that cool? That's totally fantastic. So for all of you out here, don't forget to vote on next week's prize, which is the locking stitch markers or the metal color-coded stitch markers.
Round ones.
Yes. And then you choose, and next week we can get them out. So for this last week, we had this lovely Ultra Alpaca Light. And this is a 50% blend, a 50-50 blend of wool and alpaca. And the winner for this last week was Jody Brostrom. Jody, congratulations. Look what you won. So all you have to do is get in contact with us at customer service at Alpaca Direct and give us your shipping address, and we can get it out in the mail to you right away. So I hope all of you have a great week. I hope this inspires you to take a look at this Barbara Walker books that they have online. I think I bought mine on Amazon. And next week, we're going to talk how we can convert a flat pattern to knitting it in the round and how super simple it is. I know all of you out there can do it. So I will see you next week, and you have a great week.